Okay, well, thank you again so much for being here with us today, Nicole, and participating in this project. As I say every time that I do one of these interviews, I am just very passionate about increasing awareness and decreasing stigma around food addiction specifically, but addiction in general. And I know that you have a story that you're willing to share with us. So I'm just wondering, would you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, thank you, Molly. So my name's Nicole and I'm 58 years old. I live in London in the UK, and I ended up going to a treatment center in Florida for my food addiction because there was nothing here that I could find. But I before I kind of go into that, I'd quite like to kind of backtrack a bit just to tell you a little bit more about myself and what's happened with my life. So for me, I realized that my primary addiction was food as a child. I was sexually abused at a very, very young age, and that triggered my eating disorder. So I would restrict as a baby, as a pre-verbal baby. I wouldn't eat. My mother used to have to use an egg timer to try and get a mouthful into me. And then I went to live with my grandmother, who was a force feeder. So, you know, at the age of 5 or 6, I was then force fed. So it was very interesting kind of having these two kind of extremes. I've recently been diagnosed with something called ADHD. And so as a child, you know, back in the day, these things weren't diagnosed. So I was classified as the naughty child, the child who couldn't sit, the child who was always up to no good. And I realized it was also because there was trauma in my body, you know, from such a young age, and the abuse did continue. I've only unlocked 2 memories about it. One was when I was pre-verbal and once at the age of 3. And then I have memories when I was kind of like around the ages of 9, 10, and 11 with different incidences as well. And I think a lot of my trauma came from the abuse, basically. I had alcoholic parents. My father was a very difficult, violent man, but he wasn't around that much. My mother would follow him around the world. He was in the movie business, and she would follow him around the world. So hence we got, you know, we were living with my grandmother, who was very, very strict and old-fashioned, and, you know, we were disciplined a lot and that kind of stuff. And then when I was 12, I found cigarettes, I found smoking, and I worked so hard to enjoy smoking because it's the most disgusting thing, really, you know, to try to inhale this stuff. It's revolting. And then along came the alcohol, and the first time I drank to blackout, and I kind of remember throwing up. But what I loved was that blackout, that instant kind of, oh my God, I can just forget everything, you know. But obviously as a 12-year-old, it's quite difficult to get a hold of alcohol. You know, there was alcohol in my parents' home. So I would then switch from my food, which would be restrictive or binging. There's no in between with me. It's either one extreme or the other, you know. And like with me, either I was drinking or I wasn't drinking, or if I wasn't drinking, it was the food, you know. There was just all these cross addictions. And then I went and lived in the Middle East when I was in my 20s. I'd had a suicide attempt when I was 18. I hated life. I didn't want to do life. I didn't understand it, but I ended up having 4 suicide attempts in my life, and none of them worked. And today I'm very grateful for that, you know, very grateful. But I found life really, really difficult, really hard. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. I just felt like I was this alien walking around the earth and just wondering why I felt so different, or, you know, I couldn't do paperwork. There were so many things I couldn't do. And of course, I would concentrate on not being it, the things I couldn't actually do as well. And I became this victim of life. You know, I just became, I like had victim tattooed on my forehead, you know. Yeah, you can come here, you can come and abuse me, you can use me, you can do this, you can do that, you know, because I didn't know what a boundary was. I didn't know the word no. I didn't have anything consensual. And I just let people use me and abuse me because I was so desperate for someone to love me and just love me that it didn't matter what they were like or what, you know, how they treated me. And obviously the only way that I would cope would be alcohol. And then when I went to the Middle East, I found drugs as well. So then it was, you know, I'd be on uppers, downers, alcohol. It would just like switch. It was crazy. And then when I couldn't get hold of anything, it would be back to the food, you know. I got engaged to an Arab out there, and he got arrested for drug smuggling, and he ended up going to prison for a year. But there was a defiance in me, Molly, that well, I'm going to go home with my fiance and introduce him to my mother, you know, Mohammed. And she, you know, my mother's very old school, very old fashioned, and she was horrified that I, you know, turned up with this guy. So 3 years later, he went to prison for a year, and then I stayed in the Middle East for a year, and then I came back to the UK. And I was so discombobulated. It's like, what am I doing back here in the UK? What am I going to do? You know, I had a really nice lifestyle out in the Middle East, and I came back to kind of having to live back at home with my mom and stuff. So I had my second suicide attempt. And then I got a job in real estate, in property. And it was kind of the only job that I could do without having any like real qualifications, because I was terrible at school. I just couldn't study. I really struggled with school and stuff. And I ended up doing that job for pretty much on or off for 30 years. Yeah, because it was kind of like the only thing that I could do that kind of earned me a reasonable enough salary, you know. Then I met my first husband, Paul, who seemed really normal, whatever the word normal is, you know. And I thought, well, if I meet someone who's normal, he might make me normal, you know. But of course, that was never going to happen. And I thought, well, maybe if I kind of copy what he does, you know, I literally was clueless. So, you know, we started going out and everything, and apparently I found out years after we got divorced that the night before the wedding, he rang up my mother and said, I don't know if I can marry your daughter. Her drinking's too much. We got married. And of course, my drinking got worse and worse and worse. He ended up then having an affair with someone. He became very narcissistic. He was gaslighting me. He was emotionally abusing me, which you know, it was that whole snowball. It just led me to drinking more and more and more. And because I could drink more, the food wasn't so much there at that point of my life. So I ended up in rehab, came out. Then I found out about the affair, so I relapsed. Basically had a kind of nervous breakdown, ended up in rehab again. Then I went to secondary rehab, and we were separated at that point. Then I left the secondary rehab and decided to stay down there. And I met this therapist who seemed really lovely. I met her at the doctor's surgery. Her and her husband were a team, and they would do group therapies for people who had recently out of rehab and stuff. And then they just suddenly left, which I thought was a bit strange. But I then carried on seeing her on a private basis. And she turned out to be a monster, this woman, an absolute monster. She basically, it was very, very subtly done. She told me I wasn't an alcoholic, which is what every alcoholic wants to hear. So she got me back drinking. I chose to drink, but, you know, it felt like being the victim. You know, I was very much still in the victim mode then. So I got back drinking. And over a 4-year period, she fraudulently took all my money. She claimed that she had an estate in Ireland that she was going to sell that was worth a huge amount of money. And basically she was bleeding me dry. And the problem was, Molly, it was I couldn't, if I started to question it, I would then have to question the therapist, and you know, she introduced me to her family, and I was part of her family life, and she said that, you know, I was a family member, and it was just, there was so much that so it's like I just couldn't question it. And she would always encourage me to drink and drink and drink and drink, you know, so she could obviously get more and more money. She lied. She said she had cancer when she didn't, you know, all these things went on. And then I ended up working on a cruise ship, and basically I said to her, I said, there is no more money. I said, it's all gone. And that was the last I heard from her. She did a runner, and I didn't hear anything. And it was like, so I just literally, I got really drunk one night, and I broke down in front of some friends. I told them the story, and I ended up going to the police station, and I was 35 hours in the police station giving them my statement. And they were shocked, but they caught her. It took them 2.5 years, but they eventually caught her, and she had done it. She'd fraudulently taken money from other people as well, but it was to a much lesser degree. And it went to court because she pleaded not guilty. And it was, I mean, it was a joke, basically. I spent 3.5 days on the witness stand. It was one of the most traumatic things of my life, you know. But she got imprisoned and to five years. So, you know, but I never saw a penny of the money back, basically. You know, I've learned some really big lessons with addictions and where it can lead you to, and which I believe comes from the trauma and your, you know, my low self-esteem and everything. So I got divorced from my first husband, and then I met, then I had a few years by myself, and then I met my second husband, who was in the real estate business as well, and we kind of knew each other from old. And he was an alcoholic, but he was in recovery. He'd just been to rehab, and I was drinking at the time, but I was very good at hiding things. You know, I was the world's expert at hiding, you know, how much I drank, you know, how much I ate or whatever. You know, I was really, really clever at hiding it. And we got married in 2005. By then we were both drinking. He relapsed, we were both drinking, and he was so full of trauma that he just, when he drank, we drank very differently. He drank from the second he woke up till the second he passed out at night. I would kind of do the more binge drinking, you know, rather than his was literally almost like a topper-upper. But he was very violent when he drank. So he would regularly beat me up. He broke every rib on my left-hand side, and I stayed because someone was better than no one in my eyes, you know. he broke my eye socket. He's torn my retina, so I'm blind in one eye, you know, and I stayed. But it was big lessons to learn. And he ended up going to prison 6 times, 5 times for drink driving, and 1 time for actual bodily harm against me. And I still went back to him. I couldn't, it was like he was my drug. You know, I couldn't leave this man. And there was a restricting order. I wasn't allowed to see him. So we, you know, we spent 2 years in secret with him, with me seeing him and whatever. And then in 2015, he wasn't looking very well at all. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor took one look at him and said, "You've got liver failure." So we went to the hospital, and 3.5 weeks later, he was dead. It was that quick. He had cirrhosis of the liver, and he died sober, which was, yeah, which was great. I was so pleased that he died sober. That was really meant something to me. And when he died, it was like my whole life had fallen apart. My whole world had just died, because I just died. So, you know, I was dead already, you know. But there was something in me. I was killing it with cigarettes and alcohol. And I had enough drugs to kill about 10 people, but I wanted to die, but I didn't want to die. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to, you know, how am I going to do life? And I really felt that his spirit kind of like led me to these places. And I ended up going on a juicing detox place, you know, for weight loss, as you do, to give up alcohol. It's crazy. And so he died on the 14th of October 2015. And on the 5th of November 2015, I got sober. And, you know, thanks to God, you know, to this day, I'm sober. I'm clean and sober. You know, I don't drink, I don't smoke, don't take drugs. And my life has changed beyond recognition as to who I am as a human being, how I am. And I've just been sent on this incredible journey. You know, I did AA for a bit, but that didn't necessarily work very well for me. I saw a couple of therapists, but then I decided if I was going to live, I want the Ferrari of life. That's what I want. But what the hell does that mean? And how does that look? And how do I get it? And there are all these questions. And these things, synchronicities would just happen. And I remember this woman saying, "Oh, you know, you should go and do this kind of work." And I was thinking, well, I'm not doing that kind of stuff. So I learned to love myself. I learned to believe in myself. I jacked in my job. And it's like the minute I jacked in the job, I went down to this weekend place. It's like it was like alternative consciousness workshop about finding out, you know, being spiritual and finding out about yourself as well. And I thought I'd found my tribe. I'd found my kind of people. And the woman who ran it said, you know, it'd be great if you could do the year-long women's initiation, but we're full this year and maybe next year. So I got home from the weekend, jacked in my job on the got home on Sunday, jacked in my job on the Monday, got a tattoo done on the Tuesday because I could. It was only a small one on my ankle. And then on the Wednesday, Jules rang me and said, "We've had a cancellation. Can you come next week and do this women's initiation?" And it was just life-changing. It was a lot of inner child work and finding the magical child and you know, the wounded child and the, you know, the teenager. And it was incredible. And I've literally spent the last kind of 6-7 years working on me, finding me. Who am I? What do I want to do? You know, I'm an actress now. And it's something I've always wanted to do, but I never had enough confidence to do it. But because I believe in myself today, I can do this, and I can walk down the street and I have no shame around my body. And I'm involved with so many conscious people now. And I feel one of the luckiest people in the world. But what was holding me back was my food. Because what did I do when I stopped drinking and the smoking and the drugs? Where was I going to go with the food? And the food became my enemy. And as each year went on, after, over the last kind of 6 years, I did juicing detox. I did every diet under the sun. I tried anything and everything, intermittent fasting, keto, you name it, I did it. And I would do it for 3 months, and I would do it brilliantly for 3 months. And then something would happen to me after 3 months, and that's it. I would be triggered off back to the food. And each time with addiction, it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So last year, and my friend would say to me, "Are you numbing yourself with your food?" No, what are you talking about? I don't numb myself with food. No, I'm just eating it because I like it. So I was in total denial around my food. And I think there was a fear there. It's like, I've got to hang on to something. Just let me hang on to just let me have something in my life, But I realized that it took over me. It took over my life. And I would restrict all day and I would binge all night, restrict, binge, there was no kind of in between. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And I realized in December last year that I had to do something about it. And I spoke to this friend of mine. She said, well, there's a great place in Florida. And so I spoke to them, but because of COVID, everything was online. And I said, I need residential treatment. I cannot do this by myself. So I found this place in Florida called Milestones, and it was just the best thing I've ever done. It was incredible. I was terrified getting on the plane. What am I doing? What am I doing? Where am I going? And I committed to going for a month. And what I loved about it was we were responsible for ourselves. It was up to us. We were accountable for ourselves and responsible for ourselves. So we had to plan our own food. We had to prep our own food. We had to buy our own food, and we cooked our own food. And I did, we stayed in apartments. So it was kind of like as close a situation that you could get as being at home. And it just, to this day, I haven't relapsed once on my food. It's phenomenal. The weight is coming off. It's obviously we don't weigh ourselves. I mean, I have weighed myself a couple of times because I'm human, but I've lost, I don't know, maybe 30 pounds in 5 months. It's incredible. And I feel, what I feel it's done is I'm now getting to the point, so I'm now working with a therapist in the UK to really reach the deep levels, the deep stuff, which I don't want to do. Of course, I don't want to do, but I know if I don't go there, I'm not going to get the Ferrari life that I want. So I know that I have to keep on diving, keep on going there, And I've done a lot of work around my sexuality as well. And I've met in this whole incredible community of people. But I have boundaries today. I have the word no. I have choices in every single thing that I do, And I never had that my whole life. So, to be in choice in literally anything, and I used to, you didn't understand. I had no choice. Well, of course I did have a choice, but I chose to do that route. And I can see that today. And I just find without the food, I realize now I'm clean and sober with the food, how much I was numbing myself. But I'm getting a deeper awareness around me and my patterns, and they realized how anxious I was when I was out there, and I would go into anxiety overwhelm all the time. I'd lived like that my whole life, so I didn't think there was anything wrong with that. I remember speaking to the psychiatrist. He said, is everything fine? And I said, yeah, no, it's great. It's all fine, because I didn't know, you know. So it's really, really interesting. And then this whole ADHD thing that I've just recently found out about, it just makes so much sense. I would do a job in my life, but I couldn't become a manager, or I couldn't become a certain role, because I would have to do paperwork, and I can't do paperwork. I can't read, because I don't know if that's ADHD or whatever it is, but I struggle to read, so I have to do audio stuff. I have a really bad thing with my memory, so information doesn't. It feels like there's something in my brain that needs to be unlocked, but I know it's going to happen, and that's where I feel today so blessed, that even though I know that I'm not where I want to be yet, I know that I'm heading in the right direction. And it'll probably take me the rest of my life to get that Ferrari of life, whatever that means, but it will mean to me that if I can be the best in me that I can be, and I can, give myself out to the world with love, with an open heart, that's all that I can do, but have my boundaries. I mean, miracles have happened to me since my husband died. The miracles have been incredible. I feel I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. My mother and I had a very difficult relationship all of our lives, because of her drinking, and lots of different things. And I made a decision after I got sober that I was never going to see her again, because she triggered me too much. It was too painful. I'd go and see her thinking I was about 12 years old, wanting her to love me in a way that she couldn't. She wasn't capable of doing that. So when I stopped my contact with her, it got to about 8 months of me not contacting her, and she didn't contact me. And I thought, how would I feel never talking to her again? Or I see her on my terms and when it suits me. And that's what I started to do. And the first time I literally had to see her for 10 minutes, and then I had to leave. And now we have, she's 83, she's old, she's got dementia, but we have the most amazing, incredible, loving relationship now, and I'm so blessed. And my sister, I hadn't spoken to for 6 years. Again, very, very difficult relationship with my drinking and everything. And we started talking because we had to sell Mum's house. And we are now slowly building up a relationship, and we're talking, and we're going out together, and we're having coffees, and she's starting to open up a little bit, I'm starting to open up a little bit, and it's like, wow, from someone who, it got to the point where the only way she would communicate with me would be by writing a handwritten letter to me. She wouldn't text me, she wouldn't WhatsApp me, she wouldn't telephone me, she wouldn't email me. It had to be a handwritten letter in the post. It was like bizarre, and we're totally different. We're two very, very different people, but because I've done a certain amount of work on myself, I can go to her with compassion, and if I get triggered, I'm able to say, Anita, I found that really hard to receive what you said to me, and it makes me feel, anxious, the way that you spoke to me, and I'm able to talk to her like that, which, I've never been able to do.
So it's this recovery work that you've been doing for all of these years, even before you had, sobriety from food, even, right? Like thinking back to the alcohol and narcotic journey, or cigarettes, even, whatever. There's been this like progressive journey of recovery where you've been working on yourself in these different, right, like kind of coming at it from all these different avenues, realizing food was the thing holding you back. You go to treatment and you're realizing life is so different than you've ever known. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so amazing. It's so amazing. And to think like it wasn't all that long ago, you went to Florida, you go to Milestones. I love Milestones. I mean, I've never been there personally, but Dr. Marty Lerner is one of my favorite mentors and colleagues. And Molly Carmel worked with them for a bit, and Nikki Glantz, and all of,
Oh,
they're just wonderful people, right? Like they just truly want to help and they get it. They just fully get
get it.
it.
They get it, exactly. But they show so much love, and they just want to help. And they've just been incredible. When I came home to England, I did some telehealth stuff, and they've, I still speak to Nikki once a month, and we talk about my food and stuff, and they just genuinely want to help, from their hearts. And yeah, I mean, God, I was so lucky to find this place,
Yeah.
because there isn't anywhere in the UK that is remotely like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I don't know that I don't know that there's many programs like Milestones anywhere. I know of about one other in the US, and it's in Chicago. So yeah, I mean,
okay.
for your friend to know about it and tell you about it, right? It was just like these God shot moments, almost like the universe being like,
Yes,
here you
but
go, Nicole.
this
This
is
is what
what's
happened.
happened in my
Yeah.
journey. It's like, oh my God, this is this and this and this. And where I'm so blessed is they've happened when I'm ready to deal with them, because I couldn't have dealt with my food any earlier, because I wasn't ready to face it. My sexuality work that I've done, I had to do my therapy first before I could even attempt to do that kind of work. So all these, weaving, it's like a weave, and it's still continuing. But that's okay.
Totally okay. And so I'm wondering, so like we have a really great picture of what life was like before you got on this journey, this healing journey, right? And we got to hear about going to Milestones and what life is like now, like these budding relationships and repairs, and just opportunities and taking risks and saying no and having boundaries. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to kind of share with us if you have like some daily or some consistent practices that you have that are, like considered like recovery specific. Like, are there things that you have to do each day or consistently throughout life, each week or month, whatever, that kind of keep you within those loving guardrails?
Yeah. That's a really good question, because there are some things that I do. Firstly, when it comes to my food, I'm now like super organized. I'm very chilled about it. But I have to make sure that I have my food on time. I eat 5 times a day, 3 meals, 2 snacks, and it works for me. And I've been on holiday 3 times, and I work around it, and I can now go to a restaurant and order a salad. I mean, restaurants are incredible nowadays. Can I have this on the side? Can I have my friend? Can I have, if there's a burger, can I have it without a bun? Can I have a salad on the side? The French dressing on the side, or all these things that are easy to do. A couple of times I've had things like French fries, but I don't beat myself up, because like, okay, I'm having some potato, and I'm having a 3, I can work out roughly what 3 ounces is, that's what I'm allowed. I'm very, very relaxed about it now. When I first got home, I struggled with it, because it's like, the perfectionist in me, oh my God, it's got to be exactly 3 ounces, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that, and I've got to, but now I'm kind of, nearly 5.5 months down the line, it just flows. I probably stick to about maybe 3 or 4 dishes, but they're 3 or 4 dishes that I really like, and I could literally eat them all, the same every day. And so on a spiritual side, for me, one of the most important things that I have to do to keep myself sane is I totally trust my gut. I don't question myself. I don't question my gut. I don't question my intuition. It's there. I don't question it. It may seem like the weirdest thing, you know, to do something or not to do something, but I know it's never, ever been wrong. When I get anxious, or if I get, you know, if I go into anxiety and overwhelm, I do a lot of deep breathing, you know, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 7. A friend taught me this thing about the vagus nerve, to calm the vagus nerve. So I hold my stomach with one hand and I hold the side of my head, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 7. And that really helps. When I first started to try to learn to love myself, which I found really difficult because I spent 4 years not having any mirrors in my home when I was drinking and everything, because I just hated myself so much. I did a mantra every day. And some days, on a bad day, I would do it maybe 500-600 times a day in my head. And it would be, you know, I love you, Nicole. I believe in you, Nicole, and I trust you. You know, and I did it literally for 6 months. And do you know what? It worked. It really, really worked, you know. But I tried to do a bit of meditation. You know, there's a thing called Smurf, and I tried to do meditation. I tried to do something spiritual every day. I try to be as authentic and honest with myself as I can be. And I'm trying to do the same with others as well, you know. One thing I always try and do, which I think is really important for my recovery, and you know, I'm only talking about my recovery, is I treat people how I want to be treated. How do I want to be treated? How would I feel in a certain situation if I, you know, blah at someone? So that was a really big learning for me, is treat people how you want to you know, to treat people. I try not to have expectations of anything as well, because expectations, I go into my fantasy world and then I'm always let down because it never turns out how the expectation was as well. And I suppose, you know, I lead quite a simple life. You know, I do bits of acting, I do auditions, I staff on workshops and self-developmental workshops. So this year I'm staffing on the Women's Initiation Workshop. And I do an amazing workshop where I hold space for a group of men who come to face the woundings of the feminine. And it is just one of the most beautiful, heartfelt workshop. Yeah, it's just phenomenal to watch these men turn up as scared little boys, and then they go home and they do their piece of initiation, and they're able to you know, to really deal with their stuff around women, because you know, the women who tend to hold space are quite strong. I would classify myself as quite a strong, confident woman these days, and they can literally, you know, bring it on. You know, I'm here and I can hold you, and I mean, God, it's priceless. And I have the most incredible people in my life now. You know, I don't have toxic people in my life because they're gone. I don't need them. So I have choices every single day.
Can you talk a bit about that support system that you have? I mean, I'm sure that you have people who are close to you, like inner circle kind of people. Do you have a community that you particularly feel drawn to, or do you really find it within the work that you're doing with the women's initiative and that kind of thing?
So I feel very, very blessed in the sense I have an amazing community for milestones. So we have a WhatsApp group, and we stay in touch with each other. Someone's having a bad time or good time or positivity, or, you know, this meditation's great or whatever. So I have my kind of milestones tribe. I have my women's initiation tribe. I have my celebration of being tribe. I have my sexual, you know, consciousness tribe. I have so many different tribes. So I feel so blessed that there is always someone, and I have, you know, I have people in AA that, you know, some really good friends. So I have pockets of people You know, if I'm in trouble, I can pick up the phone and there's probably 20 people I could ring, you know. And I sometimes you need that help. The most important thing, one of the most important things for anyone in sobriety, anyone, whether it be alcohol, drugs, food, whatever the addiction is have a support group, have a support network, whether it be AA or OA or a fellowship, you know, or you find your tribe in other ways. But having that support, and also people who have been through what you've been through, who also have that understanding. You know, a lot of my tribe haven't necessarily been through the addiction thing, but they've been through trauma things, you know. And I do believe, my belief is that a lot of the trauma comes from, you know, you end up being an addict of, in whatever sense, from trauma. You know, that's kind of my belief. But a support network is imperative, definitely. It's really, really important.
Yeah, awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Nicole. And before I let you go, because I know time is precious and I just so appreciate you being here with us today, I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to share something about, like, if somebody's just starting this journey, or maybe they're early on in the journey and they're like really in those like heavy days, you know, those hard days in the beginning where it just can feel like you're just walking through like a quicksand, right?
Yeah.
What's something that maybe you needed to hear at the beginning of this journey that you'd be willing to share with those folks in mind?
When I went to the first the juicing detox, and I gave up drinking, smoking, and caffeine all at the same time, I was so terrified. My husband had died 3.5 weeks before. And I was like, what am I doing? You know, I was drinking a liter and a half of vodka every day. I was smoking 50 cigarettes, and I arrived at this place desperate. But I trusted something, I don't know what it was. I trusted that it was going to be okay. And if anyone can, if I don't know if you may or may not understand the word to surrender and to let go and trust. You may be having what you feel like is one of the worst days of your life, but I promise you, however bad it gets, it will pass. I guarantee that. You know, I've had days of hell in my recovery, but I've got through them. I've got through each day. And you know, what stops me picking up, you know, food and binging? And I've had many times I could have done that. And what stops me, it's like, I've never felt like this before. Now I'm totally clean from everything. I know I'm ready to deal with the deep trauma work, but I've never had a deeper awareness about myself. And I, you know, it's just trust, just keep on trusting. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes complete sense. And I just so appreciate you sharing that, because there is something. So whether the word is surrender or let it go, you know, maybe it's radical acceptance. It doesn't really matter what label you put on it, but it's this idea of trust that something bigger, better, whatever can come of this, no matter how painful it feels, that
Yeah.
on the other side of it is this life that you've been living.
Oh my God. I know. You know, it's like, I try and think back of the old Nicole, and it's like she feels so alien to me. But I have to. I love her, and I you know she had a really tough time. But it's like I can do anything I want now. You know, I can have so much. I have so much fun, and I laugh so much, and you know, my magical child comes out, and I just have the best time ever. You know, but I have my dark days as well. But I know they're going to pass. And I learned to sit with them. That's the difference, is learn to sit through your pain, because it's going to pass. You don't need to stuff it with alcohol. You don't need to stuff it with food. You don't need to stuff it with anything. It will pass. And that's the gift that I have. I know it's going to pass.
Oh, well, thank you again so very much for your time, your willingness, just the sharing of the hope. Um, it's there's no price tag that we can put on that, right? And
No.
so I just appreciate you doing that for us today.
Thank
And
you, Molly.
please let me know if there's anything I can ever do to support you on your journey. This is my first time meeting you, and I'm so
I know.
happy that you reached out and I did get to meet you, because you are so inspiring. And Jen Unwin the other day said that I was a hope dealer, and I feel like that's what you are, Nicole. I feel like you are a hope dealer, and please stay in touch.
Yes, Molly, thank you. Honestly, thank you so much. And, you know, if I can help anyone, you know, and just if anyone can have what I've got, it's just like, just please do the work. It's okay. You'll get through it. You will get through it, because there is gold on the other side.
Yeah.
There
So,
really is. Thank you, Molly. It's been
thank
lovely.
thank
All
you.
right. Take care. Bye.